First, I would like to thank Deem, of course, for inviting me to moderate today's session and be with you. I must say that I was very surprised because, I have nothing to do with architecture and design. I work strictly in education and youth and development. But I was pleasantly surprised because it was really a wonderful thing to see how scholars are bringing together the different disciplines. And we here at EUB, and particularly at the Issam Paris Institute, work closely on bringing together the different disciplines to address issues like education, refugees, crisis, climate change, and whatnot. And so with that, I will tell you a little bit about what I do, and then I will introduce my speakers for today. Basically, at the Education and Youth Policy Research Program at the Issam Paris Institute, we work closely on addressing projects that are closely linked to policy within the scope of education in Lebanon and the region. So we work closely on issues of refugee children, vulnerable children, as well as Syrian, as well as Lebanese. We work on issues of youth, Lebanese youth and Syrian youth, and also the issue of higher education. So we try to understand better what are the challenges to accessing higher education in Lebanon and other countries for Syrian refugees, but also same-wise for our Lebanese youth. With that, I will begin by introducing my first speaker, Ms. Noura Jumblat. Noura Sharabati Jumblat is the founder of the Kyani Foundation, which was established in 2013. This foundation embodies the commitment, her commitment to the advancement of literacy education for the Syrian refugee children and youth. Kyani Foundation was established to bring education to the most vulnerable children. In 2013, in partnership with the American University of Beirut and the Lebanese Ministry of Social Affairs, the foundation began building portable school campuses, the Ghata schools, in Syrian refugee camps. Kyani secured access to formal education for thousands of children in the Bekaa Valley. The Kyani schools, about which Ms. Jumblat is going to be speaking to us about today, are safe and clean learning environments that offer one meal a day and an escape from the difficulties of the settlement of life and many other challenges that these young people have to face. Ms. Jumblat also holds several memberships on many other international organizations, which I will not list today, but you all have the bio in the brochure. I would also like to add that I have worked personally on a project in which we engaged Kyani schools. And I was just telling Ms. Jumblat about the impressions we received from international organizations which cooperated with us on this project. And they were very impressed by the approach that the schools were taking with the children, particularly the issue of addressing psychosocial support in the schools. So yes, the children need the education. Yes, the children need all the other support and physical, support and whatnot. But the psychosocial support is something that we tend to miss in many cases. In our public schools, the Lebanese public schools, the morning shift, we have some morning shifts and afternoon shifts. For those of you who may not be familiar, the afternoon shifts are strictly for Syrians, and the morning shifts are mixed for Lebanese and Syrians. And when we did a recent study on vulnerable children in Lebanon, we found that in the morning shift, we did not have any counselors to deal with the children. And in the afternoon shifts, we had counselors to help the children deal with some of the difficulties and challenges they were facing. And this is, of course, a shortcoming from us as people who are dealing with education. And this was highlighted in our research. But what we heard from the teachers at these public schools who taught both morning and afternoon shifts is a call for support, not academic support for the children, but actually the psychosocial support. And it was very interesting to see that we sometimes get, I think, carried away talking about the crisis and whatnot, but children are children, whether they're Syrian, they're Lebanese, no matter what nationality they are. And the Lebanese children in these public schools are also equally in need of this psychosocial support, as well as the Syrians. With that, I won't go on. I will leave the floor to Ms. Jumblat, please.
So, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Hari. First, I'd like to thank the organizers of the Sustainable Design Week and Karim Nasha for inviting me here today and for giving me the opportunity to introduce our foundation's educational work with Syrian refugees. I'll be showing a few slides to illustrate our work. As you well know, as we all know, that for the past 7 years, the people of Syria have suffered the single largest political, humanitarian, and development crisis in recent history. Nearly half of the population has been internally displaced. 6 million people have been forced to flee and seek safe haven in neighboring countries, namely Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey. And we have some of the numbers that are officially, these are official numbers. However, real numbers are way beyond that. Other refugees have chosen to journey further on challenging and life-threatening roads and seas. Lebanon has been at the forefront of this humanitarian crisis. A small country of 4.5 million people, it has shown exceptional commitment and solidarity in sheltering close to 1.5 million refugees, giving Lebanon the highest per capita concentration of refugees in the world. Over half of all Syrian refugees in Lebanon are children, a staggering 54%. Despite international support and government efforts and race strategies 1 and 2 to increase the number of children attending public school, there remains today over 300,000 children and youth that are considered out of school, whether informal or non-formal. UNICEF's No Lost Generation campaign describes the ordeal, and I quote, an entire generation of children that is being shaped by violence, displacement, and a persistent lack of opportunity, and could be lost forever, with profound long-term consequences for Syria, the region, and beyond. Of course, some of the challenges facing these children in public education are space shortage. We have them there. Language and curriculum difficulties, lack of trained teachers, lack of parental documentation, lack of transportation, poor perception of education is also something that is out there. Child labor is a new ethical and moral dilemma. Refugee families who are struggling with pervasive poverty and have few opportunities to secure income are in many cases dependent on their children as breadwinners. I personally witnessed children as young as 5 years old working in the fields during harvest season. In cities, they work on the streets, begging, shining shoes. They work in factories, auto repair shops, etc. And they are often faced by long working hours and extremely low wages. Early marriage is also a drawback, a major drawback, with 40% of young refugee girls being married before the age of 18 years old. There's no doubt that education is life-changing for these children and youth, and they would be able to lift themselves and their families out of misery if they learn the basic skills of reading or writing. That should be guaranteed to every person on earth as a fundamental human right. Therefore, the fear of a lost generation is real, and our duty, we felt at one point that our duty was to prevent that. In 2013, we established Kyani Foundation, a small independent NGO, to help respond to this challenge by providing children and youth with learning opportunities. We focused on the most vulnerable children living in informal tented settlements. It looks like a pretty picture in the Bekaa. However, the reality is far from that. These ITXs are mainly created from timber and plastic which largely fail to meet the minimum humanitarian standards. Kyani partnered with the Center of Civic Engagement and Community Service at AUB. I don't see Rabia Shibli, he was supposed to be here. But anyhow, the director of the center, and we established the first Ghata portable school in the Bekaa in 2014. So this Ghata structure that you see there proved to be highly efficient for direct intervention and has allowed us to build school campuses within and alongside informal camps. These units are cost effective, built from locally available materials. They are simple to assemble and disassemble and transport, and are capable of withstanding severe weather conditions. With this effective and sustainable school design, we were poised to take a leading role in bringing education to out-of-school refugees. The projects and the programs have been expanding ever since. I believe this is where our journey with resourceful refugee education began, through providing quality education in restorative environment. This is a picture where, with some of you, we were there at that school in Tuliani camp, and this is one of our earliest schools. We built it right in the middle of the camp. And you can see how the camp, it really serves that camp, and there are about over 30 camps around the school. We have 600 children in that primary school. Our holistic model for quality education includes 3 levels of formal education. Along with different educational programs. Our levels consist of primary, middle, secondary, and vocational education and training, in addition to the university bridge program. And by providing these elements, we intend to build the human capital among the most vulnerable communities. I have to say that when we partnered with AUB, it was definitely a major step in the right direction. AUB's contribution has been pertinent throughout our work, involving faculty and student bodies, professors from the departments of education, nutrition, psychology, and architecture. All have contributed their expertise, research, and monitoring. And we really aimed at transforming a humanitarian crisis into a development opportunity. This is your library. So we visited this Geothermal Library that was built by the architectural department and Karim and his students. And we visited today, and it's really an extraordinary thing. I think he'd be better talking about it than I can. We have 5 primary schools in different areas in the Bekaa. At these schools, we provide students aged 6 to 14 with official accredited Lebanese curriculum, along psychosocial support sessions, daily healthy meals, and all the materials needed, such as stationery banks, winterization kits, uniforms, etc. Our schools implement 2 shifts a day. The first shift at 8 to 12, and the second shift is 12 to 4, which is quite different from public schools, which their second shift starts at 4, which is a bit later. And can you imagine children going in the Bekaa at night back home, especially on winter nights? So this is one of the major things that has the challenges that some of the refugees meet. Our Syrian and Lebanese teachers are also trained by AUB and UNESCO. We have also 2 all-girls schools with Malala Fund and UN Women for Peace Association. Some 350 adolescent girls aged 14 to 18 are in middle secondary accredited education. It's worthy to note that 2 science labs have been set up to ensure that the students also receive the practical science experience. I'm not sure if we saw any of, we will be seeing some of the labs. The girls at these schools are provided with, last year, let me go back, last year 11 out of the 15 students succeeded in the official brevet exam and went on to higher secondary education. The girls at these schools are provided with vocational trainings that include courses in nurses' aid, computer literacy, AutoCAD, sewing, embroidery, and lately a well-known Lebanese designer has come to the rescue to introduce the art of fashion design. And I'm going to name him for our Lebanese audience. It's Salim Assam, who is offering his expertise for embroidering and so on, which is a quite wonderful thing. Also under the artistic banner, last spring we launched the L'Oréal Academy, Beauty for Better Life Academy from L'Oréal Group, the French industrial giant. The academy provides theoretical and practical training in hair care. It is diploma awarding. It allows 40 beneficiaries per year to be fully functional and promptly fit both at the social and professional level. We have now secured access to free secular and formal education to nearly 4,000 children and youth in 7 accredited schools. Let me say that official accreditation was crucial in reassuring parents and partners alike that our schools are credible and meet the official established quality standards. Our track record has also persuaded UNESCO just lately to choose Kyani as their implementing partner to build 2 new schools, 2 new Hata schools in the Bekaa. So soon we will have 2 new schools. In addition to our schools, we have implemented education support program and for refugees and host community alike, helping them access university studies as well as finding job opportunities. And these programs, the first is University Bridge Program, Padilea. And here on the slide, you see some 44 students who graduated last year and have secured, and 19 out of them have secured scholarships at the Lebanese universities. This program is supported by King's College in the UK, AUB of course. The project aims to deliver blended higher education programs consisting of massive open online courses delivered with classroom based learning, providing English, math, science, and IT. And this is the graduation day in June. And then we also have another program with World Food Program, Tech for Food. It aims to create livelihood opportunities through intensive English digital skills training. We have 2 centers, one in Mixi and one in Alay. Each center receives more than 100 youth per cycle. These trainings aim to enhance the youth employability. And our success, of course, doesn't only depend on the programs we provide. It is also a result of human resources and the partnerships we have built. I will start with the Kyani family and team. And both our teaching body as well as the administrative team come from both the Syrian and Lebanese communities. There is a majority of women in our Syrian workforce, mirroring the reality of refugee families in Lebanon, where approximately 80% of families are headed by women. I think it's 80%. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 80%. Anyhow, it's quite a high number. Empowering women has always, through economic engagement, has been a deliberate component of our work ethics. We have today 133 teachers, and our staff at the schools totals 49. We have seven administrative staff at each school, 7 persons working. All our teachers and administrative staff are from the Lebanese and Syrian communities and also the Palestinian. And here we have a slide with our politics of collaboration. In order to fully succeed, we needed to ensure politics of collaborations. I think we were talking about it earlier, including the Ministry of Education as a partner, the Ministry of Social Affairs, and of course local municipalities where we have our schools and where you can find the majority of the refugees, and there's almost 20% of refugees that live in the Bekaa. It is, I think, the highest number of refugees in one government. And we drew on complementarities and gave particular attention to strengthening our multi-stakeholder partnership with UN agencies such as UNESCO, alongside INGOs such as the Jesuit refugee services, Reach Out to Asia, Education Above All, and you have a long list of some of most, not actually all of our partners. And well, let me conclude by saying that 6 years following its establishment, Kyani has been able to pilot primary, secondary education, vocational training, and university bridge programs. This represents a holistic approach for providing education in a protracted crisis. It has also allowed us to provide the main objectives of refugee governance, which are about rescue and autonomy. Our duty of rescue meant we ensured education for the most vulnerable refugee children, as well as enabling students, teachers, and administrative staff to help themselves and their communities and families, of course, through education and jobs, an approach that can help all refugees find a route out of limbo. Thank you. I think I should give this away. Do you want to take this?
No, it's okay. You can keep them. Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Jumblat. I think the accomplishment here is very impressive.
Thank you.
Probably people who are not in education are not aware of. One thing is that there are half of the refugees we have in Lebanon are children who are school-aged. And not only that, about 24% or 25% only have access to formal schooling. And this is only the group that we're talking about who actually tend to make it to school. And then we need to think about how many actually stay in school till the end of the year. And so, thank you. And so this is a challenge by itself. But also, I would like to point to something that usually in times of crisis, education is one of the sectors that has to compete with many other sectors that are seen as priorities, like shelter, food, whatnot. And so what happens usually is less attention is paid to education and given to other sectors. And having initiatives like the one we just had an opportunity to look at is really something excellent that helps to support education in times of crisis, especially when the crisis becomes protracted and there is kind of donor fatigue. And so education is one of the things that tends to be dropped first. And so opportunities like this and initiatives like this tend to keep education at the forefront. I guess we have finished early, but we would like to stick to our program, and therefore we're going to break right now. And so hold all your questions, all your comments, and we're going to